hidden elegy in your cells. There is a language written in the spirals of your being, a code that whispers of both creation and dissolution. Your DNA, that intricate helix of life, does not merely dictate the color of your eyes or the rhythm of your heartbeat. It carries within it a far older story, one inscribed in the silent symbols of endings. This is the death symbol in your DNA, not as a flaw or a failure, but as an essential stroke in the masterpiece of existence. It is the shadow that gives form to light, the silence that shapes sound, the invisible architect of all that lives, and all that must, in time, return to the source. Imagine for a moment the double helix not just as a biological blueprint, but as a sacred scroll, etched with the twin commandments of being and ceasing to be. Every strand, every nucleotide, is a verse in an epic poem that began with the first spark of life and will continue long after our individual stories have faded. Death, in this context, is not an intruder, but an ancient collaborator, woven into the very fabric of our cells. It is the quiet pulse beneath the drumbeat of life, the unseen current that guides the river of existence toward its inevitable, necessary sea. We often think of death as something that happens to us, an external force, a thief in the night. But what if it is something that happens within us, and has been happening since the moment we first stirred in the womb? Apoptosis, the programmed death of cells, is the body's way of sculpting itself, shedding what is unnecessary to make way for what must grow. Fingers form in the fetus because the cells between them die. The immune system destroys what threatens the whole. Even at the microscopic level, life understands the sacred economy of endings. Could it be, then, that death is not the opposite of life, but its most intimate companion? That the same force that unspools our chromosomes in decay once guided their careful winding in growth? This is not merely a biological curiosity, but a metaphysical revelation. The death symbol in your DNA is a mirror held up to the cosmos itself. Stars collapse so that new ones may ignite. Forests burn so that the soil may remember how to nourish. Civilizations rise and fall like breaths, each exhale making space for the next inhalation. If we listen closely, we might hear the same truth, echoing in our own bodies, that to live is to participate in an endless cycle of surrender and renewal. Yet modern humanity has turned away from this wisdom. We have medicalized death, sanitized it, hidden it behind sterile walls and euphemisms. We speak of passing away as though it were a gentle drifting off, not the profound metamorphosis it truly is. But the helix does not lie. It remembers what we have forgotten, that death is not an error to be corrected, but a dialogue to be honored, a rhythm as natural as the tides. To explore the death symbol in your DNA is to embark on a journey both scientific and sacred. It is to peer into the microscope and the mystic's vision at once, to see the body as a temporary constellation of stardust already in the process of returning to the void. It is to recognize that every heartbeat is a defiance and an acceptance, a protest against entropy, even as it marches in time with its rhythm. And perhaps in this recognition, we might find a deeper peace. Not in denying death, but in understanding how deeply it has always been a part of us. So let us begin here, at the crossroads of biology and meaning, where the spirals of your cells whisper secrets older than thought. Let us unravel the paradox that to live fully is to die daily. that the very thing we fear most is already written into us, not as a curse, but as a covenant with eternity, the unseen architectures of mortality. If DNA is the scripture of the body, then death is one of its most profound verses, not scribbled in the margins but central to the text, a recurring motif that shapes the entire narrative. To understand, the death symbol in your DNA is to decode a language where endings are not erasures but transformations, where dissolution is not annihilation but an essential phase in the alchemy of existence. Here, in the interplay between nucleotides and meaning, we encounter core themes that reveal mortality not as a flaw but as a foundational design. The necessity of surrender life resists entropy, but it does so by wielding entropy's own tools. Consider apoptosis, the programmed death of cells that allows an embryo's fingers to separate, a tadpole's tail to vanish, a wound to heal by shedding the damaged. Without this cellular self-sacrifice, there would be no shaping, no growth, no metamorphosis. The body, in its wisdom, knows that to preserve the whole, some parts must be permitted, even orchestrated, to die. This is not destruction, it is refinement. Expand this principle beyond biology, and a pattern emerges. Forests require wildfires to clear the underbrush and release seeds sealed in resin. Societies collapse, so new ideologies may rise from their ashes. Even love demands the death of certain illusions to mature into something deeper. The death symbol in your DNA, then, is not merely about the body's eventual end, but about the daily, microscopic surrenders that make continuity possible. It whispers, "What must you release to become?" The illusion of separation. We think of life and death as opposites, two territories divided by an impassable border. But the helix tells a different story, one of entanglement. Telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes, fray with each cell division, a ticking clock embedded in your biology. Yet this very erosion is what allows for replication, for renewal. The process that wears you down is also the process that sustains you. This duality mirrors the paradox of a flame. It exists only by consuming itself. In the same way, your aliveness is inextricable from your dying. The oxygen that fuels your cells also rusts them. The sun that nourishes you also writes your eventual undoing into your skin. The death symbol in your DNA is a reminder that you are not a static entity but a dynamic event, a brief convergence of elements that have always known how to disperse and reconfigure. The myth of permanent civilizations build monuments to outlast themselves, as if stone could cheat time. But your body, wiser than empires, does not bother with such illusions. It regenerates and sloughs away, replaces and recycles, never clinging to a single version of itself. The cells that composed you 7 years ago are mostly gone. The ones here now will follow. You are less a solid thing than a wave moving through the ocean of matter, a temporary pattern insisting on its shape even as the water changes. This is the deeper teaching of the death symbol, that identity itself is a kind of myth, a story the mind tells to make sense of the flux. Your DNA, though uniquely yours, is also a mosaic of ancestral fragments, viral insertions and mutations, some of which may outlive you by millennia. In this way, death is not an end, but a return, a relinquishing of the individual back into the vast collaborative project of life. The hidden intelligence of decay. We fear decay as chaos, as the enemy of order, but nature treats it as an essential collaborator. Decomposers, fungi, bacteria, insects are the unsung scribes of the biosphere, translating the dead into new vocabularies of nourishment. Your own gut microbiome thrives on the breakdown of what you consume, turning death into vitality at every meal. On a cosmic scale, this is the same intelligence that allows a supernova's destruction to seed galaxies with the elements of life. The death symbol in your DNA is part of this vast economy, ensuring that nothing is wasted, that every ending is a dispersal rather than a disappearance. The carbon in your bones once breathed inside dinosaurs. The iron in your blood was forged in dying stars. You are not just destined for decay, you are made from it. The invitation to sacred participation, to recognize the death symbol in your DNA, is not to resign yourself to mortality, but to engage with it consciously. Indigenous cultures often ritualize death as a dialogue, honoring ancestors as active presences. The Japanese practice of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, treating fractures as part of an object's history rather than flaws to hide. These traditions grasp what biology confirms, that breaking and mending are not sequential but simultaneous, that loss is woven into the act of becoming. Your cells already know this. The question is whether your consciousness will align with their wisdom, whether you will live as though death is only a distant threat, or as though it is and has always been one of your innermost teachers. The myths woven in your blood. The double helix is more than a biological structure. It is a living myth, an ancient story told in the language of proteins and hydrogen bonds. To truly understand the death symbol in your DNA, we must step beyond the microscope and into the realm of allegory, where science and symbolism merge into a single, shimmering truth. Here, in the liminal space between fact and fable, we find narratives that reveal death not as an end, but as a hidden choreographer in the dance of existence. The phoenix in your nucleotides. There is a bird that lives in your cells, not a literal creature, but a pattern as old as fire. The phoenix, that mythical being consumed by its own flames only to rise again, is more than a poetic metaphor. It is the story your telomeres tell with every division, the slow burning away that makes renewal possible. Each time a cell replicates, its telomeres shorten like a wick burning down. And yet, this very act of erosion is what allows life to continue, just as the phoenix must burn to be reborn. This is the paradox written into you. You are dying to live. The apoptosis that carves your fingers in the womb, the shedding of skin, the graying of hair, all are echoes of the same cyclical truth. The phoenix does not fear its own ashes, because it knows they are the price of flight. The cosmic serpent and the Ouroboros in the coiled strands of your DNA, another ancient symbol hides. The Ouroboros, the serpent that devours its own tail. This is no accident of imagery. The Ouroboros represents eternity, the endless loop where endings and beginnings are the same point seen from different angles. Your DNA, too, is a loop, not just in its physical structure but in its function. It replicates, it mutates, it passes from one generation to the next. A snake, forever consuming and recreating itself. This symbol appears in alchemy, in Aztec cosmology, in the dreams of modern physicists who speak of the universe as a self-sustaining cycle, and it lives in you. The mutations in your DNA, some harmless, some deadly, are the serpent's flickering tongue, tasting the future, testing what works and what must be shed. Death here is not an interruption, but an essential turn in the spiral. The underworld journey of the Selene myth, the hero must always descend before they can ascend, into caves, into the underworld, into the belly of the beast. Your cells know this journey well. Consider autophagy, the process by which a cell consumes its own damaged parts to survive. Like Orpheus descending for Eurydice or Inanna stripped of her jewels at each gate of the underworld, the cell enters a state of self-dissolution to emerge stronger. This is not mere recycling. It is a ritual. When nutrients are scarce, the body turns inward, breaking down the non-essential to preserve the core. In doing so, it mirrors the oldest human stories of sacrifice and transformation. The message is clear. To live, you must first learn to let go. The labyrinth and the telomeres, those protective caps at the ends of your chromosomes, are like the walls of a labyrinth. They guide the way, but they also mark the limits of the journey. With each cell division, the labyrinth's walls close in slightly, the path grows shorter. This is not a flaw, but a design. Like the mythical labyrinths that forced heroes to confront their own mortality, your telomeres ensure that life is not infinite, that every story must one day find its exit. Yet even here there is a whisper of rebellion. Cancer cells, those renegades of the body, activate telomerase to rebuild their labyrinths endlessly. But in their immortality, they lose their way, growing chaotic, destructive. The lesson is stark. Without death, there is no direction. The symphony of the senescent, not all cells die cleanly. Some enter senescence, a twilight state where they cease dividing but linger, secreting signals that influence those around them. These cells are the elders of your cellular society, wise, but also burdensome. In youth, they guide growth. In age, they accumulate, contributing to the frailty of the body. This, too, is a mythic pattern. The senescent cell is the oracle who has outlived their time, the king who refuses to relinquish the throne. Cultures across history have grappled with how to honor the old without being shackled by them. Your body's struggle is the same. The death symbol in your DNA does not only speak of endings, it speaks of timing. The alchemy of dust, every atom in your body was forged in a dying star. Carbon, oxygen, iron, all were scattered into the cosmos by stellar explosions, only to coalesce again into planets, oceans, and eventually, you. This is the grandest allegory of all, that death is the universe's way of redistributing its materials, of trying new combinations. When you die, you will return to this cycle. Your atoms will become soil, air, perhaps even stardust once more. The death symbol in your DNA, then, is not a termination notice, but a library card, a reminder that you are part of a story much larger than yourself, one that has no final page. Living with the death symbol, to grasp the death symbol in your DNA, is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is an invitation to reshape how you move through the world. The realization that mortality is woven into your biology should not paralyze you with dread, but rather liberate you into a more vivid, intentional way of being. Here, we bridge the cosmic and the everyday, exploring how this ancient wisdom can transform the way you live, love, and even face the inevitable. The art of letting go as a daily practice. Your body is already an expert in the art of release. Every day, millions of cells undergo apoptosis, making space for new growth. What if you adopted this same rhythm in your emotional and psychological life? Modern culture clings fiercely to accumulation, more possessions, more achievements, more control. But the cellular wisdom encoded in you suggests another path, shed to thrive. Consider the Japanese concept of ma, the sacred space created by absence. In music, it's the pause between notes. In architecture, the emptiness that gives form meaning. Your life too needs these deliberate voids. What might happen if you regularly pruned the non-essential, relationships that no longer nourish, obligations that drain rather than sustain, even outdated versions of yourself? The death symbol in your DNA reminds you that destruction is not the enemy of growth, it is its prerequisite. Time as a finite currency. Telomeres are the ultimate hourglass, their gradual shortening a silent tally of your cellular divisions. While science searches for ways to extend them, the deeper lesson lies in their inevitability. Time is not renewable. Yet most of us live as though it is, squandering days on distractions or postponing what matters until some illusory later. The ancient Romans kept memento mori, reminders of death, as a tool for clarity. A modern application might be asking, if this were my last year, month, or week, how would I spend this hour? Not to induce panic, but to distill focus. The things that survive such scrutiny, a child's laughter, creating something meaningful, sitting quietly with someone you love, are the threads that truly weave a life. Embracing impermanence to deepen presence. The cells in your taste buds renew every 10 days. Your liver regenerates within a year. Even your bones are in a constant state of demolition and reconstruction. This fluidity means the you of a decade ago is literally gone. Why, then, do you cling so tightly to identities, grudges, or past glories? Buddhist monks craft mandalas from colored sand, only to sweep them away upon completion. The practice is not nihilistic, but liberating. By rehearsing impermanence, they train themselves to fully inhabit the present. You might adopt smaller versions of this. Photographs you delete after savoring, journals you ritually burn, even the simple act of leaving a beautiful rock cairn on a trail for others to discover and dismantle. These are ways to whisper back to your DNA, I remember how to let go. The paradox of longevity. Quality over quantity. Lobsters, intriguingly, show no signs of biological aging. They die from external causes, not internal decay. Yet humans, with our finite telomeres, have developed something lobsters lack: culture, art, the urgency to create legacies. This is the gift of your mortality. Knowing life is limited is what compels you to make it matter. Modern medicine often treats aging as a disease to be cured. But what if, instead of obsessing over lifespan, you focused on health span, the quality of your years? The Okinawans, who live exceptionally long lives, don't merely delay death. They fill their time with ikigai, a sense of purpose, and moai, enduring social bonds. Their secret isn't denying mortality, but aligning with it, living in ways that make the inevitable acceptable when it comes. Grief as a form of cellular wisdom. When a cell detects irreparable damage, it doesn't rage against its fate. It activates a graceful self-destruct sequence to protect the whole. Human grief, in its healthiest form, mirrors this. It is not a problem to be solved, but a natural reorganization of the self around loss. Just as apoptosis clears space for new cells, grief clears psychic space for new ways of loving what remains. Western society often rushes grief, treating it like an illness rather than an intelligent process. But other cultures ritualize it. The Irish wake, the Mexican Dia de los Muertos, the Jewish practice of Shiva. These traditions understand that grief, like cell death, is a form of maintenance. To suppress it is to risk a kind of spiritual cancer, unprocessed pain that grows in the shadows. Legacy. Beyond the biological, your DNA passes on through descendants, but your influence need not be limited to genes. Consider the concept of memes. In their original sense, units of culture that replicate like genes, but through ideas rather than nucleotides. A story you tell, a kindness you plant in someone's memory, even a recipe handed down. These two are threads in the tapestry of what outlives you. The astronomer Carl Sagan famously noted that we are star stuff, contemplating the stars. You are also story stuff, a temporary vessel for narratives that will ripple beyond your physical form. The death symbol in your DNA is not just about your end. It's about how you contribute to what continues. A new relationship with fear of death often masquerades as lesser anxieties, fear of change, of irrelevance, of losing control. But when you internalize that death is not an alien invader, but part of your deepest blueprint, something shifts. You begin to recognize that many of your daily fears are echoes of this primal one, and that in facing them, you rehearse for the ultimate letting go. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios to reduce their terror. Modern psychology echoes this with exposure therapy. Both methods agree, familiarity drains fear of its power. By contemplating your mortality regularly, not morbidly but honestly, you drain the specter of its ability to haunt your subconscious. Choices. Becoming conscious of the code. The double helix is more than a biological structure. It is a sacred text, a philosophical treatise written in the language of carbon and hydrogen. To recognize the death symbol in your DNA is to awaken to a profound truth. You are not a static entity, but a fleeting arrangement of stardust that has temporarily taken your shape. Mortality is not an error in the system, it is the system itself. And yet this realization is not a sentence of despair, but an invitation to a richer, more urgent existence. The alchemy of awareness, every spiritual tradition, from the Tibetan Book of the Dead to the Stoic meditations on mortality, arrives at the same conclusion. To remember death is to remember how to live. The ancient Egyptians weighed hearts against feathers. The samurai wrote death poems. The existentialists stared into the abyss until it stared back. These were not morbid exercises, but technologies of aliveness. When you internalize that your telomeres shorten with each sunrise, that your cells are already engaged in a daily dance of renewal and release, life ceases to be something you passively endure and becomes something you actively sculpt. The courage to live as a dying being. Most people live in a kind of trance, as though death is a rumor, a distant event that happens to others. But your DNA knows better. It has been preparing for the inevitable since your first breath. To fully awaken is to step out of that trance, to feel the preciousness of a shared meal, knowing it will never recur exactly so, to write the letter you've postponed, to forgive what you've clung to as unforgivable. The Latin phrase carpe diem is often mistranslated as seize the day. A truer rendering is pluck the day, like a ripe fruit, knowing it will not keep. The ripple you leave in the cosmic pool, consider the butterfly effect of your existence. The atoms in your body will one day become part of new life. Perhaps a blade of grass, a cloud, another human. But your influence extends beyond the physical. A kindness you showed in 1997 may still echo in someone's choices today. A word you spoke carelessly might linger like a shadow. The death symbol in your DNA is not just about your end. It's a reminder that you are always leaving traces, whether you intend to or not. What fingerprints do you wish to leave on the future? The invitation. So here is the call, encoded in your very cells. Live with the end in sight, not as a specter, but as a lens that clarifies what matters. Release, like a cell releasing. Let go of what no longer serves. Relationships, possessions, even outdated versions of yourself. Create like a star going supernova. Pour your energy into what will outlast you, whether art, love, or acts of courage. Love like a telomere counting down, with the fierce tenderness of knowing nothing is guaranteed.